Hello and we alive. My name is Christian. I'm the host of the Disruptive Chef Entrepreneur Show. And I know I say this at every episode, but I have a really special guest. So if you ever wanted to figure out what it takes to excel, not just excel, be the best in operational excellence in your business, you need to listen to today's episode. Hello, and we are back again. My name is Christian. I'm the host of the Disruptive Chef Entrepreneur Show. And I have a really, really special guest for you guys today. I had the opportunity to work with the person for over a decade. And every time I think of operational excellence, there's nobody better than her. She is a hospitality leader. She's one of the best project managers. She is great in developing people. She's great in bringing the best out of people. She's amazingly good in change management. And not only all of that, she's an amazing human being. Welcome to the show, my dear friend, Lin Johnson. Welcome to the Disruptive Chef Entrepreneur Show.
Hey, Christian. Nice to see you. How you doing?
Good. And by the way, to our listeners, she played hard to get. We had to roll out the red carpet to have her come here and be part of this. And to our listeners, what I want you to learn today is Lin is amazingly good in what she does. And more than that, she makes it really easy for people to understand to kind of do better today than you did yesterday. So with that, Lin, give everybody the 5-minute cliff note who Lin Johnson is.
Oh, 5 minutes. That's a lot of time. Well, I've been in this business probably close to 40 years now. When I was thinking about how I got started in the business, it's a funny story. When I was in high school, my boyfriend's father owned a really nice restaurant in the city of Buffalo. It was called The Cloister. We used to go down there and hang out a lot, and his mom would ask us to shop in the walk-in cooler, and he'd chase me around with lobsters. And we'd bring home lobsters and fillets and cases of wine. And it was just my first experience in a fancy restaurant. After I went off to college, and I studied psychology at college, which has come in very handy. I will tell you, in this business, very handy. I got a job at the Rat Skeller, so this is going to be definitely showing my age, because the drinking age was 18 at the time. So when I graduated, I was offered a management job at the Rat Skeller, and I was also a teacher, and there weren't a lot of teaching jobs back in the 70s. So it was pretty lucrative to work at a bar. So I ran the bar for about a year and a half, and then they decided to increase the drinking age to 21. So you really don't need a bar on campus at that point. And I was reassigned to the dining hall, the student dining hall, which I thought was such a demotion. But honestly, it got me in loving college dining. One thing about college dining, and when you're in it for 40 years, you always feel young because they cycle through more and more freshmen every year, and you can continue to hang out with freshmen and have fun and really learn and grow and teach students and the people that you're working with. So I worked 10 years at RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology. My goal when I worked there was to have every management job on campus. So I worked at the store in the tunnels. I worked at the two main retail operations. Then I went over to the resident dining. And lastly, I was the catering director. And I absolutely love catering. And I think that relates a lot to project management and a lot of what I've done throughout my career, because you're doing a lot of planning, then you're starting to initiate, and then you do the grand event, and then you start over again. So there's always something new and exciting in catering. So then I moved on. I was asked by Bon Appetit to come and take University of Pennsylvania from being a South Op to working with Bon Appetit. And that was a big challenge. It was a union account with, I think we had about 30 different operations on campus, 5 dining halls. So transitioning all the management, kind of perceived it as a hostile turnover, but you have to get in there and work with people and let them know how valuable they are. Out fresh. And so then I went on to Chartwell's from there and became director of Centers for Excellence, which is where the excellence comes from, and worked a lot with you in that capacity. And then I was promoted to VP of operations at Chartwell. So, and then I went on to work with Flick and independent schools. And throughout this career, my biggest passion was doing renovations of serving facilities. And I will say for 40 years, it's still a struggle to get it done right. So that's what I'm doing now. So
That's amazing. So I'm really curious because you're really good in the whole idea of operational excellence. So how would you define operational excellence in the context of hospitality?
I think operational excellence is really continuous improvement. You're constantly wanting to do things differently, come up with new ideas, take on challenges, problem solving. All of that has to do with operational excellence. So I think in hospitality, because it's such a high paced business and it requires so many people to do it well, that you really have to be focusing on all that stuff. And every day, I think the thing that made me love this business is every day is a new day and a different challenge. And some days are good days and some days are bad. And you really have to rely on whoever you're with and who you're working with to help support some of your ideas and stuff.
I love that. And you break it down and make it sound so simple. But how does operational excellence, or what crucial role does it play in achieving just a great overall performance from the team for the clients?
Well, I think I when I was thinking about this, I want to give credit where credit is due, but I think Rick Post always talked about owning your business.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody has to own the business. It's not just the managers, the vice presidents, the presidents, CEOs. It goes right down to the basic entry level positions. And more people feel responsible and that they really contribute and are a part of the business, not just a worker. I think that's really important. And it comes down to respecting everybody and what they can contribute to the organization and letting them know it. I think a lot of times throughout my career, there's been so many different levels of management and not enough respect to the people that are really on the front lines, really representing your business and taking care of your customers. And if you're not taking care of them, that I think this is a Southwest quote or something. It's if you don't take care of your people, they're not going to take care of your guests. So
I love that. That's so true. So you've been really successful in that. So can you share some strategies or a best practice which can help people achieve that operational excellence?
Well, I think again, at any level, as I said, it's respect. And I think, my job, especially with Chartwells, and I know you and I discuss this a lot and we experience it a lot, but we're the outsider. We're going into an operation and we're there to help.
Yeah.
But often that's perceived as, here they come, here comes the corporate folks, they're going to tell us what to do. And so you really have to get the respect of the people that you're there with, and then you have to help them see what you see. I used to say, you're not going to go in and do an audit and finger point all these things. I want you to be seeing the same thing I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And what I always said to managers, if you don't like repeating yourself, and if you don't like having to do the same thing every day. So for example, you walk into a servery and you see a dirty rag sitting on the counter. If you just walk by and ignore it, first of all, you've lowered your standards. And second of all, you haven't demonstrated to others, how important it is to move that rag. And thirdly, you've got to open your eyes and see the details and notice the things. I mean, it's always, you see people go and pick up napkins on the ground instead of walking over it. That's a detail person. That's somebody who's seen it, doesn't want anyone else to see it, and takes care of it. So I think, and that's where you gain the respect, when you come in and you help people recognize the things that they should be paying closer attention to.
Yeah. And again, you make this sound so easy being, with you and walking into some of the facilities. What I always admired the most about you could walk in and you have that ability of not just reading people. You walked in, and I will never forget this. We leave the location nameless. We walked in the back door and you said, "Oh my God, I can't believe he's doing this." I said, "What?" He says, They're putting on an effing show for me. I want to see what's really going on. I know I can feel it. I can feel it. We went into the office. You confronted the at the time district manager, and he was saying what you just said. He thought we were in there to point fingers, and he says, "No, I'm not gonna do this. You gotta go back to them, and we come back tomorrow. I want to see what's really going on. I don't want you to put on a show because I can help you if you put on a show." And for me, I will never forget that. And you were so spot on. I mean, you hit it, and walked in the back door, and you knew exactly that they try to put on a show. Where does this that ability come in? And then also, what I absolutely love about you going into, and when you teach people and you train people, I think you want it more for them than they want it actually for themselves, because you really want them to succeed. Where does that ability come in, Lynn?
Well, I first of all, I love training. I've always really enjoyed having that ability to do that. I can't explain where it comes from me, but I do. You're absolutely right. I want people to realize that they're learning something, that they're not just going through the motions of going to a training, 2-day training or whatever it might be, that they're actually participating in, and they're going to walk out with more information than they came in with, or just a new revelation, kind of, oh, I never saw it that way. But when I do training, which, I think it's so important that it's interactive and that people are, like I said, participating. They're being able to problem solve while they're learning.
Yeah.
The worst thing in the world is to sit people in a room, especially people that are used to being on their feet and moving pretty much all day, to have them sit in a room. I mean, it's always funny to watch chefs. Sorry, chef, but and they start to doze off, and and you have to get them up and moving them around, or you're going to lose them completely. So it's just really important that
Yeah.
people leave and say, "Wow, I learned a lot. This turned out to be better than I expected it." That's what really
Yeah.
gets me up
And
in the morning.
I think you were ahead of the industry back then, because you always said we can't teach those guys with a classroom style. They're not used to sitting down that long. They will not learn. We need to get them in their environment, and we teach them while we go along. And back then, you were a little rebel by doing this. Today is now the way you train people. Where did that ability come in, the kind of pushing the boundaries? You really led the industry at the time with on the spot training, in the station training, not a classroom style where people just didn't learn anything.
Yeah, I have to give credit to having a great boss that gives you free reign. I've worked in some circumstances where I couldn't do that, and I had to just toe the line, and I had to do what the boss thought of doing. Steve Sweeney he just let me go. Take off. I was talking with Stacy Shaw a couple weeks ago about that. Like, he just let us run the meetings and build the training into it, and just give them a small overview. But that was the best job of my life, is when I could get up every morning and go off somewhere and decide to, I think we need this training program, or we need to do that, and without anyone stopping me. So,
Um,
and that was fun. That was a lot of fun.
And also, to our listeners, I was loved working with Lynn for two reasons. Number one, she's not your typical trainer, because I think the reason you are so good in what you do is because if you taught somebody in the salad bar, you worked the salad bar. If you taught a cashier, because you were a cashier, it wasn't something you read about it or learned. It's because you physically did it, and you were so good at it. But for me, what I loved is you were probably one of the hardest working people we had in that industry. You were there with us 6 o'clock in the morning. You were there with us 10 o'clock at night. You never complained. You never walked home and the other office people walked out. You were always in there working harder than anybody else. And it came always from a very genuine way. You wanted things to be better. And for me, that's what I admired on you. So what are one or two things you can give our listeners as a tips and tricks, what you have learned, maybe a successful tool, a successful strategy, anything you learned which could help them not just bring their people to the next level and achieve that culinary excellence, but just have people buy into the program. And it doesn't matter how good the program is and the training is. If you can people to come on board, nothing else works. And you're really good at that.
Yeah, I guess you kind of said it. It's setting the example, and it goes back to the respect. I give respect to people, and I want them to respect me. And the only way that's going to happen is working side by side. And when you mentioned the salad bar, it used to frustrate me back in my early career because somebody sitting at a desk would lay out the salad bar. And then when you go to talk to the people who set the salad bar up every day, day in and day out, or even deli is probably a better example, they're going to set it up that's going to be the most effective and efficient way. And my opinion doesn't really matter because they know how the customers are going to want their sandwich made, or they know what they're going to use the most and how to have it closest to them. I mean, I don't think we give hourly associates or frontline associates enough credit because they're there day in and day out. So they know how many cheeseburgers they're going to go through. And, they just have a really good handle on it. And we don't ask them for enough feedback either. One of my big pet peeves when trying to do food production is we've got to find out what we sold or what we used, and not just what's in the cooler. And let's make sure we have 10 cases of burgers because we always have 10 cases of burgers. So who do you go to get that information? It's the frontline staff, and they're going to make you successful if you're willing to let them. And I think that's always been difficult with management, misinterpreting what their role is. A manager is really someone who's dictating what you do. A leader is someone who's getting the job done, but getting it done with the people that they have. And making, another really important thing, and I'm probably digressing a little bit here, but is too often we spend so much time on the bad performers, and sometimes they're ignored and they get away with bad performance. Sometimes they have to be constantly talked to, whatever the case may be. But the good performers, the people that come in every day, never miss a day of work, never come in right on time, they don't hear enough praise that they should. And that was always really important to me, that you're treating everybody the same. You're not ignoring the poor performers and then not thanking the good performers. So I think that's really important. It's so hard to talk about tools because I'm not a task manager. So, some of this stuff comes intuitively, and it's just what feels right, and what you see results come from too. When I was getting prepared for this, and I was thinking about companies that are known for great service. But one statistic I stumbled on was that 73% of consumers make their decisions about purchasing based on customer service. And I think that's true. We all go back to a store where we've been treated kindly. I was yelling at my husband yesterday at the store he used to work at because I went to buy something. I brought my own bag, and it was bottles of wine, and I had the wine in the bag, and I set it on the counter, and he pulled the bottles out and huffed and puffed, and he was all upset that I had this bag. And I thought, was that really necessary? And I went home and complained. But anyway, I digressed a little bit there.
I love that. So what do you think, what role does change management play in implementing operational excellence?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, it's continuous process. It's continuous improvement. So with improvement, there's always change. And that's another thing that people have to accept. They have to accept failure. Failure is going to help you learn. Repeated failure is not good, but I think it's good for people to have a mistake or a fail, and then it makes them hyper aware that they don't want it to happen again. Too often, failure is not looked at positively, but I think it is important.
I love that. And I think you're really good at that, which kind of brings me into my last few questions. You were or raised in the industry. It's a very male heavy industry and you very good in what you do. So as a woman in project management and in project management in hospitality, how did you navigate those situations?
I wanted to mention it's one of the tools that I thought of as you were
Yep.
asking the question. I'll go back to that. One thing that I really worked hard to do was to get involved outside of my day job within the organization. And I think I worked on the zone committees. I
Mhm.
worked women's leadership. So the more in Restaurant Association in New York, and anyway, get involved. I think that's a huge tool to get involved in as many things as you can to get exposure outside of your day-to-day job.
Mhm.
So go back and so the question about gender. Yes.
Yeah.
That was a tough one. I really was thinking about throughout my career, and I wish I could say that we've got a lot of gains. I think there are some wonderful women CEOs in the hospitality industry, but I think it's still a lot of bias. And I don't think it's just gender. I think there's still a lot of racial bias, gender bias. I wish it was further ahead than it is. And it's been disappointing and frustrating through my career. I mean, when I was at RIT, that catering manager job was my brass ring. I really wanted that job, and as I said, I did all the other management roles there, but I really struggled to get my male manager or director to consider me. I had I actually had one small child at the time. The
Yeah.
first thing out of his mouth was, well, who's going to watch your daughter when you're working catering, which is none of his business. That if I want this job, I will manage
Yep.
my personal commitments. And it's not really up to him to decide if that's right or wrong or any of that. And then once I finally got that job and I came in with my salary requirement, he said, well, why do you need that? How much is your daycare? And my daycare had nothing to do with it. I wanted to be paid fairly, and for my skills and what I can contribute. And it infuriated me. And then, and this story, but when I became a vice president, I was told I was a vice president and multiple proposals and things, but that really wasn't my title. And when I finally was able to get that promotion, I asked for a 40% raise. And the reason was because I wanted to be compensated at the level of my peers, my
Mhm.
male peers, and I knew what their salary ranges were. That was a bold move. I didn't know if that was going to go or not. Fortunately, it did. You got to start to value yourself. And I'm going to do a plug for a book by Mika Brzezinski. It's called Knowing Your Value, and I really found that book to be very beneficial for women to see the disparities in all sorts of business, not just hospitality, but and how to really stick up for yourself.
Mhm.
Women tend to learn more, achieve more, do a much tougher job to their male counterparts. They underrate themselves
Mhm.
when they're going up against a job with a male. So, I mean, it's still there. I may piss a few people off on this.
No, it's spot on, and I think the industry needs to have some disruption around that because yeah, I was very honest with you. Working with you was a refreshing change going into facilities because the hospitality industry is still an old white male business. I think there's room for a shakeup. And so now, if there's a new female executive coming into the industry, what words of wisdom would you have for somebody starting a career you chose to do a few years ago?
I think a lot of what I've already said is just, earn the respect, work side by side with people, take their advice seriously. Don't feel like you have to have all the answers, but, also, I'm stealing this from other people, but surround yourself with people that will make you look good and want to make you look good and that are your best advocates and best resource for comfortably talking to. And it's really important to get that kind of team together and respect their advice.
I love that. And by the way, this is not just for females. I think that advice goes also for males.
Yeah,
They can very much benefit from that as well. So, where do you feel the industry needs a little bit of disruption?
speaking about the gender differences, one thing that has been important to me. And I watch my young millennial daughter in a VP role, and some of the really great things her company is doing. But I think there's still so much implicit bias out there, that, and it ties into the conversation about gender and race and other nationalities. I mean, I'm trying really hard to recognize when I know that bias is there and coming up. Everybody has it. And if you deny it, you're not going to learn. You're not going to change. You're not going to, you just say, oh, I'm not like that. I do, I love everybody. And that's just silly. You have things that you were raised with or that you experienced that's going to give you a bias in any interaction with anybody. And the more you recognize it when you're interacting with someone, and the more you try to change yourself or bring it to the attention of others, I think that's just really important, to point that out.
Very, very true. And I really appreciate you sharing so freely. So to wrap it up, if anybody is struggling with operational excellence, what is the steps they need to take to knock it out of the park the way you did?
Give me a call. Again, it's just being detail oriented, making sure that you're constantly improving, taking people's advice. It's certainly not a blueprint. It all comes with whatever the experience is. Have a mentor, have people that you have for resources to try to help you get there, or ask for fresh eyes. Just if you're a restaurant owner, bringing a couple of people in to experience and be honest about what the experience was like is going to get you to operational excellence. Being willing to take that feedback.
I love that. So with that, Lin, I want to say thanks for being here today. We need to do a 2.0 of that, because even within our show we do here, we trying to have more females on, because we want to bring all kinds of perspective to our listeners. And for me, I absolutely love what you do. I'm a big fan of yours. I hope you know that. And I always enjoyed, the 20 years we worked together. You've been amazing, not just, to me and my team at the time, but every employee you met, you really went above and beyond and went out of your way to make sure you found, or you left them better than you found them. And you've been really, really amazing at that. So with that, if people want to get to know more about you, how can people get a hold of you?
They can send me an email. It's Lin, LinJohnson @gmail. So I'm happy to talk with anybody, and feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Christian knows my phone number, but
yeah. And we will have your information in the show notes. And if anybody wants to learn more about Lin, just let us know. We put you in touch with Lin. She's amazingly good in what she does. And with that, I want to say thanks for being here today, Lin. Thanks for giving so freely of the gift of your time. And you did make us work hard to get you on this show. So we need to have a promise that you come back.
Well, I will say you didn't. I was more nervous than I needed to be, because you do a nice job of calming people down. So
no, I appreciate it. So Ms. Lin, thanks for being here.
Nice words.
Thank you. And to our listeners, if you haven't done so, please check out the disruptivechef.club, which is our private community where you get a front row seat of all the great things we do. And you can also get a little glimpse on who are the people we have coming up on the show. Also, every time we try something new, you get a front row seat and get to try the program with us. So we get some tactical feedback from everybody. So with that, Ms. Lin, thanks again for the gift of your time. Thanks for being here today. Until next time, remember to disrupt the kitchen, fire up your career, stay hungry for change. I'm Christian, here with Lin Johnson. We are signing off. Be the change, be the challenge, and be the chef who sets the world on fire. Until next time, stay disruptive, everybody.